court is aware, those charges were dropped. Talking about the witness tampering charges. Since Melly's first trial, a great deal of evidence has been suppressed. The co-defendant has pled to a 10-year sentence, of which he will serve approximately 4.5 additional years. I still can't believe that.
Court went down today and dropped some serious news about YNW Melly's case, enough to get his mother hyped on Instagram, talking about her son coming home real soon. The hearing actually put a specific date out there for when he might touch freedom again. Word is Melly's team is making another push for release after spending damn near 7 years locked up. His brand new attorneys rolled up to Broward County Court that Wednesday, March 25th, filing documents to get bond established. These lawyers aren't holding back either, laying out how their client's been treated during this bid. They're highlighting the fact that Melly's been stuck in solitary confinement going back to December 2021, completely isolated. On top of that, the man hasn't had a single visitor come through in 4 years, and they took away his phone privileges too, all the way back in 2022. Here's what's wild about this whole thing. Throughout these 7 years, every single time his legal team tried getting a bond hearing scheduled, the answer was no across the board. But something's different this round because there's actually a hearing locked in for April 30th, which could be the day Melly sees the outside world again. His lawyers are arguing there's been a shift in how things stand, plus new evidence has come up that wasn't in front of any judge before, which opens the door for bail reconsideration. To really drive their point home, the defense showed the judge something crucial from that original trial. Prosecutors straight up admitted they never even found a gun in this whole situation.
So the first thing is I didn't have a firearm, so I can't know which I'm going to use in order to replicate any of my tests. So I can't make tests for this determination because I don't know what was used.
Okay.
The defense attorneys for Melly then brought up what investigators actually pulled from Bortland's place during their search.
Co-defendant YNW Bortland was booked into a Miami jail Monday night and is being held behind bars on an out-of-county warrant. We just confirmed the warrant is out of Broward County for witness tampering. The warrant obtained by Law and Crime Network states as follows. On or about April 10, 2023, continuing through and including July 22, 2023, Cortland Henry, aka Bortland, along with others, did unlawfully and knowingly engage in misleading conduct toward another person with the intent to cause or induce them to withhold testimony. The warrant continues the alleged witness had been summoned by the legal process to the jury trial of Jamel Dimmons, aka YNW Melly. The dates in the warrant are important. Jury selection for Melly started in mid-April, and a judge declared a mistrial on July 22nd, the same day the warrant claims Bortland allegedly tampered with the witness.
The prosecutors then brought up what investigators actually pulled from Bortland's place during their search. Inside, they found Bortland had written down specifics about where different jurors were posted up in the courtroom, including descriptions of how they looked. Bortland had rolled through to Melly's first trial for just 1 day, supposedly there to get his own court date sorted out. After handling that, he bounced from the courtroom, but not before clocking exactly where each juror was seated and memorizing their physical features. The whole setup made it look like Bortland was planning something serious, that if these jurors came back with a guilty verdict against his boy, he was ready to handle business for Melly. This type of move is extremely illegal and falls under juror intimidation, which is a federal offense that'll get you hit with serious time. The entire justice system depends on jurors being able to make decisions without fear of retaliation or violence. When someone documents juror information like that, with clear intent to possibly threaten or harm them, it's considered witness tampering and jury intimidation, both of which carry heavy penalties including years in federal prison. The fact that Bortland wasn't even supposed to be paying attention to the jury, but instead was mapping them out, shows premeditation, which makes it even worse in the eyes of the law.
Keep it real, this is sloppy. Bortland, how the f you gonna have the notebook of the jurors in your house? Holy sh! Like, come the f on. It's like doing them and having the surveillance tape in your DVD player or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, come on, bro. Like they raid your crib and the surveillance footage of the is in your DVD player. They're like, oh, okay, thank you, brother. This can't be at your crib.
Melly's legal team put in paperwork demanding his immediate release based on how the jail's been handling him. He's going after the Broward Sheriff's Office with a lawsuit over cruel and unusual treatment behind bars. According to what he's claiming, they've blocked him from any contact with his family for 3 whole years. No visits, no phone calls, nothing. This got attention from other artists in the industry who started speaking on it. His attorneys are painting a picture of these conditions being absolutely brutal, saying Melly's stuck in a freezing cell without decent meals or any real human interaction whatsoever. The situation got bad enough that his mother started opening up publicly about what her son's going through on the inside, and the way she described it made it sound like he's barely holding on. She went into detail about how they're applying different standards to Melly compared to everyone else locked up in there, putting extra restrictions on him that other inmates don't have to deal with.
They have the right to use a telephone. They have a right to be allowed to write letters to their loved ones, to receive their mail. They hold his mail, they don't give it to him.
Charleston's taking a completely different stance on the whole situation though, coming out and saying Melly has everything coming to him with those harsh conditions. He's been vocal about believing the treatment is justified and that Melly shouldn't be catching any sympathy for how he's living behind bars.
The YNW Melly, I'm so happy he in jail getting mistreated. Yeah, I'm so happy he in jail getting mistreated, homie. Homie, when you take a life, homie, you ain't got a right to complain about a motherfucking thing, about being mistreated, when you done chose to play somebody.
But then court just revealed some new information that's switching things up. Fresh evidence surfaced showing YNW Sack Chaser had been making moves against Melly in the weeks leading up to his death. The prosecution is now throwing this out there as the reason behind why Melly would have gone through with it, claiming Portland was involved in helping him pull it off. This whole detail came from someone affiliated with YNW who spilled it during their police interrogation.
Motive would Melly have to kill his two friends?
They just pick him off? I don't know, bro. I ain't gonna lie, bro. I'm gonna tell you straight up. Man, Melly was on FaceTime. Melly was like, y'all don't know, bro. Y'all don't know what Sat was doing to me. Y'all don't know what Sat was doing to me, bro. Like, saying it like Sat was some shit.
This affiliate is claiming Sack Chaser did some wild stuff to Melly that pushed him over the edge, saying it became the driving force behind wanting payback. Apparently, the situation got so deep that Melly was actively looking for guidance on how to handle it permanently. According to a former O-Block member, Melly reached out to King Von specifically asking for advice on how to take somebody out the game. Now, Von wasn't just some random person to be asking these questions to. The Chicago rapper had a serious reputation on the streets, with multiple alleged bodies tied to his name that law enforcement and the feds had been investigating for years.
Did Von really tell you that Melly told him that he killed his two friends?
He ain't come out and say, like, we got into an argument. And so, you know, if you know, when people could say something without saying it. And so he told me, like, once I posted what I posted, Von was mad at me. Bro, why you put up there, bro? Walk the bam. I'm like, you sitting up here, like, you know the love we got. You do this for us, but you gonna trust that his two friends? And he said, them was trying to extort him.
The way this case is building up, prosecutors have been stacking evidence that could seriously put Melly away for life. Looking at everything they've gathered, there's multiple angles they're attacking from that make it harder for the defense to create reasonable doubt. First off, the forensic evidence isn't playing in Melly's favor at all. Ballistics reports and gunshot residue testing placed him in close proximity to when the shots were fired. The prosecution has experts ready to testify that the bullet trajectories and angles don't match up with the drive-by story that was initially reported. They're arguing the science proves the shooting happened inside the vehicle, not from outside like Melly and Portland originally claimed. Blood splatter patterns in the car tell a different story than what the defense has been pushing, and forensic specialists are prepared to break down exactly why the physical evidence contradicts the narrative of a random attack. Then there's the cell phone data and GPS tracking that prosecutors have been holding on to. Digital forensics pulled location data showing where Melly's phone was during the critical time period, and apparently it matches up with where the shooting actually occurred. Text messages and social media activity from before the incident show communication patterns that prosecution claims demonstrate premeditation. They've got experts who can trace the route the vehicle took that night, and according to them, the path doesn't align with someone trying to get their friends to a hospital quickly. Instead, it looks calculated and deliberate, like someone was buying time or staging a scene. The medical examiner's testimony is probably one of the strongest pieces against him. The autopsy reports on both victims show wound patterns and angles that medical professionals say are inconsistent with a drive-by shooting. The coroner is expected to explain how the trajectory of bullets entering the bodies, combined with where they were seated, points to someone inside the vehicle being the shooter. These medical experts will likely testify that the physical evidence on the victims' bodies tells a clear story that contradicts what was initially reported to police. Witness testimony is another major problem for Melly's defense. Multiple people have given statements to investigators that poke holes in his version of events. Some witnesses claim they heard Melly making threats or expressing hostility toward the victims in the days and weeks before the shooting. Others have come forward saying they received messages or had conversations where Melly allegedly discussed having problems with Sakshazar specifically. The prosecution has lined up several individuals who can testify about the deteriorating relationship and growing tension within the crew. The behavior after the incident looks bad too. Prosecutors are going to hammer on how Melly and Bortlen acted following the shooting. Security camera footage from the hospital shows body language and interactions that investigators say don't match someone who just lost their friends in a random attack. Phone records reveal calls made immediately after the shooting that seem suspicious in timing and content. The prosecution argues that instead of showing genuine grief or shock, the evidence points to people trying to coordinate their stories and cover their tracks. Then, you've got the motive angle that keeps getting stronger. With this new evidence about Sakshazar making moves against Melly beforehand, prosecution can paint a clear picture of why this happened. They're building a narrative that shows escalating conflict, disrespect, and perceived threats that gave Melly a reason to want revenge. The fact that he allegedly reached out to King Von for advice on handling someone takes it from just having beef to actively planning something violent. Prosecutors will argue this shows intent and premeditation, which elevates the severity of the charges significantly. The prosecution is also likely to use Melly's own lyrics against him in court. While this is controversial, they've done it in other rapper cases successfully. Lines from his songs that reference violence, betrayal, or specific situations could be interpreted as confessions or evidence of his mindset. Even though artistic expression is protected, prosecutors have gotten clever about connecting lyrics to actual events in ways that influence juries. All of this together creates what prosecutors call a totality of circumstances case. They don't need one smoking gun piece of evidence when they can show a pattern of behavior, physical evidence, digital trails, witness testimony, and motive all pointing in the same direction. That's how they secure convictions even in complex cases, by building layer upon layer until the defense can't reasonably explain away everything. The fact that Melly's been denied bond repeatedly over 7 years suggests judges reviewing the evidence have found it substantial enough to keep him locked up. If a jury sees all these pieces laid out together during trial, creating reasonable doubt becomes extremely difficult for the defense, which is exactly why Melly's legal team keeps trying different strategies to avoid going back to trial. Making Melly's situation look even grimmer, Bortlen just cut a deal with federal prosecutors and agreed to a proffer, which means he's cooperating fully. The terms have him pleading to accessory after the fact, facing a decade behind bars with an additional 6 years of supervised release afterward, though gain time could reduce that. His legal team's already been hit with a deposition request for the civil lawsuit that's running parallel to the criminal case. DJ Academics broke down how Bortlen's agreement mirrors what went down when Gunna cooperated against Young Thug. The major thing here is that when the judge accepted Bortlen's no contest plea on both charges, there was a requirement attached. He has to lay out the complete factual basis behind everything. That means Bortlen can't just give simple answers and move on. Because of this proffer agreement, he's got to provide full detailed testimony about his role and what actually happened. Academics pointed out this is straight up a Gunna-style plea deal, and people got upset when he called it out for what it was. Even a legal expert who's been following the Melly case closely pointed out that prosecutors don't just reduce someone's exposure from 5 potential life sentences down to only 10 years for nothing. That kind of massive reduction means they're expecting Bortlen to give up absolutely everything he knows about what went down.
Will be flipping. He is going to be tell-all about anything he knows about the double case, and they will know if he's telling the truth or telling a lie when he gives his full quote-unquote confession as to what happened that evening. And that's what happens. A lot of times where guys are in the prison for 4 or 5 years awaiting trial and looking at a life sentence, and they're offered 10 years where they'll be home probably in another 3 years that he'll serve, he decides to flip and become a cheese eater. And that's what happens a lot of times on these cases. And I was expecting it to happen a lot sooner than it did. He held out for quite some time. But long story short is it looks like he's going to flip.
Prosecutors are playing chess with their strategy to bring Melly down, and here's how they're moving. Instead of revealing what Mariah Hamilton, Melly's ex, is going to say when she takes the stand, they're holding that back to use it on Melly's new trial, as the police investigators believe Melly had Mariah leave the country and stay gone for 3 years straight, specifically to keep her from being able to testify during the initial trial.
Mariah Hamilton is spending her first day at the Broward County Jail. She has no arrest record until now. U.S. Border Patrol agents arrested her at Miami International Airport Monday after she arrived on an international flight. Court records show Hamilton was ordered to testify in Demon's first trial.
When Mariah Hamilton finally came back to the States, law enforcement was waiting and locked her up immediately. She only got out after putting her signature on paperwork guaranteeing she'd show up and testify at Melly's next trial. First thing she did after walking free was hit up Facebook writing about being grateful for her people holding her down, saying it's all part of God's plan and not hers. This move gave the prosecution all the confidence they needed to abandon the witness tampering charges entirely, since they're already sitting on enough ammunition to potentially put Melly away for life on the primary charges. According to a 5-page document the prosecutors filed, they made the strategic decision to let the witness tampering case go specifically to protect their jail phone call recordings, which are crucial for proving guilt in the trial that's coming up. The state backed off because there were still unresolved issues around potentially getting those jail calls suppressed, and losing that evidence would have been devastating for the 2027 trial. Originally, prosecutors had charged Melly with tampering and gang-related violations connected to his alleged scheme to prevent Mariah Hamilton from ever stepping foot in that courtroom. Financial documentation reveals some interesting transactions. Mariah pulled in over $31,000 from the management company handling Melly's business, plus got help securing a Mercedes, all while having zero reported legitimate income sources. The evidence goes deeper though. Recorded jail conversations, security footage, and written notes passed between inmates demonstrate that Melly orchestrated an entire communication network using other prisoners as middlemen after his phone access got revoked. These calls and messages showed him giving instructions to people on the outside about keeping Hamilton far away from court proceedings, using coded phrases and fake names to avoid detection. Interestingly enough, this whole operation isn't even new information. YNW Juvie's father was already speaking on this exact situation in an interview that happened 2 years back.
This kind of crazy way that Melly was communicating. He wasn't allowed to use the phone, but he was passing notes to people, and then this person's calling this person and then that person.
And like to me, they're going through extreme measures, trying to cover up or convince people not to testify, like Mariah mom.
The walls are really closing in on Melly from every direction at this point. Between Bortland flipping and agreeing to cooperate fully, Mariah being forced into testifying, and all the physical evidence prosecutors have been building up over these 7 years, the defense is running out of room to maneuver. What looked like it might have been a case with holes in it earlier on has transformed into something much more solid for the prosecution side. The streets are split on how they're viewing this whole situation. You've got people like Charleston firmly believing Melly deserves whatever comes his way, while his supporters are still riding with him and pointing to the harsh conditions he's been dealing with in solitary as proof the system is trying to break him before trial even happens. His mother's post about him coming home soon shows she's holding on to hope, but the reality of what's stacking against him tells a different story. That 2027 trial date is circling on everyone's calendar now, because that's when everything gets laid out in front of a jury. By then, Melly will have been locked up for nearly 8 years without a conviction, which is already unprecedented in itself. The prosecution clearly feels confident enough in their evidence to wait it out and build the strongest possible case, rather than rushing into another trial that could end in a mistrial like before. What makes this particularly heavy is how people from within Melly's own circle have become the state's most valuable assets. Bortland's proffer agreement means someone who was right there through everything is now telling prosecutors exactly what went down.